Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 different blunt weapons in Fallout 3. Well, plus another one because one of them has a unique variant. These ones are all kind of low-leveled blunt weapons that you find throughout the Wasteland. Raiders tend to carry them, and they're fairly common throughout. For this, we're going to be taking a look at the lead pipe, the police baton, and the tire iron. So some of these you can get right away. Actually, pretty much all of these you can get right away. The police baton is literally in Vault 101, so you can get this one right at the very start. It's probably going to be your second melee weapon after the baseball bat. And then the tire iron, as well as the lead pipe, is not something that's super uncommon for raiders to be carrying around, or for you just to be finding laying around in the metro tunnels, or really anywhere that you explore. They're kind of all over the place. Let's talk about the lead pipe first, and then we'll move on to the other ones. So for the stats of the lead pipe, this one does 9 damage per hit, which is honestly pretty decent. It's not bad for a melee weapon in this game. This one does 21 damage per second, which is also pretty decent. It attacks fairly fast, as you would sort of hope for a weapon like this. Has a 1x crit chance, although weirdly enough, this one actually does double crit damage at 18, so that's twice as much as its base damage, which is really good. This one costs 24 action points to use in VATS, which is actually the lowest of the weapons that we have here. This one weighs 3 weight, which does make it not really that awkward. You can carry around a lot of lead pipes, and they're pretty common, so you should be able to fix these up, and they're not going to weigh you down too much. And then this thing has 667 hits in it before it breaks, which isn't the most for a melee weapon, but it's not that bad either. And with how common these are, you're probably never going to run into a situation where you break your lead pipe unless you're just not paying attention to the health. So it's honestly not that bad of a weapon overall. For the pros of these weapons, generally they're all really common. Police batons, lead pipes, and tire irons are not hard to find at all, so it's not going to be hard to fix these up. And they generally have pretty decent DPS, at least with the lead pipe pretty much having the most out of these weapons. The cons, though, is that pretty much all of these weapons fall off. They're not that great as one-handed melee weapons, and they're not the best blunt melee weapons in the game. You do get access to better ones than this, so they're okay in the early game, but not so much later on. For the lead pipe in particular, for a tier list, I'd probably put this one into like B tier for melee weapons. It's decent. It's not bad by any means, and with how common they are actually a pretty decent starting weapon, especially since raiders tend to carry them around, and if you don't want to be using up your ammo right away, carrying around a lead pipe can be a pretty good option, especially if you end up like beating up your baseball bat a bit much and you just don't have a way of fixing it up. The lead pipe is a decent replacement for that. Let's move on to the baton now, which the baton is substantially weaker. The baton does 4 damage per hit, which isn't super high. This does 9 damage a second, which is also not very high. Has a 1x crit chance, only does 4 crit damage. It's the same as its regular damage, but it's still pretty low. Costs 25 action points to use in VATS, which isn't that bad for a melee weapon. This one weighs 2 weight, so it is lightweight. And this one has 1,250 hits in it before it breaks. The baton is actually quite durable, and that's kind of the only thing it really has going for it, is that it's not likely to break, so if you do want to use this right out the vault, it's pretty good then, but you're probably going to discard this once you start getting some of the better melee weapons, or you're only going to keep this around to really smack rad roaches and mole rats and stuff. Nothing that's really worth your time. This one is a substantial downgrade from the pipe, and I would probably put this one into our D tier. It's just not really worth using, and you're probably better off picking just about any of the other melee weapons. Up next, we got the tire iron. Again, another pretty common raider weapon, and a pretty early game weapon in general. This one you can also find in like the locked boxes that the fire hoses come in. Tire irons are often usually in there. Same with lead pipes, funny enough, so you can get either of those there. This one does 6 damage per hit, 14 damage per second, so still not really high on either of those. Has a 1x crit chance, does 6 crit damage, the same as its regular damage. Costs 27 action points to use in VATS, a little bit more than these other ones for some reason, I don't know why. This one does weigh 3, and this has the same item health as the pipe at 667. This is just a worse lead pipe. It's pretty much worse than it in every regard. It requires more action points, it does less damage per second, it weighs the same, and it has the same item durability. You really shouldn't be taking this, and I would put this down into D tier. The lead pipe is substantially better than this with its higher damage and higher crit damage in particular. There is a unique tire iron though, interestingly enough, which this one is called the Highwayman's Friend, and this one you get at the town where the superhuman gambit is going, Catterbury Commons. You can actually run right over there and go into the building that this is stored in and just pick it up right away. So this is a really early unique weapon that you can get if you know where it is, and this one is better than a regular tire iron. This one does 10 damage per hit, so that's okay. 23 damage per second, still swings, it swings faster and it hits a little bit harder than our lead pipe, which is kind of nice. This one has a 1x crit modifier. This one only does 10 crit damage though, so it is a little bit, maybe not as good as lead pipes, in my opinion. Still costs 27 action points like the regular tire iron. This one for some reason weighs more at 5. I don't know why that is. And this one has 1,000 hits in it before it breaks. This one is good, and if you want to run and get it at the start, it's pretty decent because it's going to be an okay melee weapon to be swinging around. I don't really think that it's better than the lead pipe though, even though it has slightly more damage and slightly better DPS. If you hit a crit with the pipe, you're still going to be doing more damage, and this one does way more. The item health doesn't really matter between the two of them because they're both about as common as one another, so you're likely going to have them both in pretty good condition. And it does take more action points than the pipe, so I'd actually put this one a tier lower than the pipe, into C tier. It's an okay melee weapon, but that's about as far as it goes. And that'll do it for this roundup of 4 melee weapons. None of these are incredible by any means. Lead pipe is actually decent enough. It's an okay melee weapon throughout at least the early game, and even somewhat later on if you just want it to smack smaller enemies that you're not going to be using your bullets on. But none of these really stand out like some of the melee weapons can. So tell me your thoughts on these weapons. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.